I have a sneaky suspicion that I didn't push play. I meant record.
Hi guys, we're back with another reaction
But we've gone a bit of a different direction. Basically, I read this thing, it's called the Russian Sleep Experiment, and it's sort of creepy and it's like a true story and all this apparently. We found like an audio
video
story.
Creepypasta sort of thing.
Yeah, and we're going to react to it because it sounds fucking cool. I can't help it, I am who I am.
Stop it.
Let's go for it.
Let's do
It's happening.
Creepypastas.
It's already scary. Holy.
In the late 1940s, a group of Russian researchers discovered an experimental gas-based stimulant which could eradicate the need for sleep in humans. 5 test subjects were chosen to test the gas.
24 there.
All deemed enemies of the state. They were
Not
kept
true.
in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake, as the gas was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so their only means of monitoring the subjects were microphones and a few thick glass portholes into the chamber. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on, running water, a toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. Everything was fine.
You can hear all his mouth sounds like.
The subjects hardly complained, having been promised, falsely, that they would be freed if they did not sleep for 30 days.
Kind of
Their
lies.
conversations and activities were monitored closely, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past life, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark.
I think because you can hear all the thing, it makes it even creepier.
After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate signs of paranoia. They stopped talking to one another, and began alternately whispering to the microphones and portholes. Oddly, they seemed to think they could win the trust of their researchers by turning over their fellow comrades. At first,
And saying
the
what?
researchers suspected that this was an effect of the gas itself. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight.
3 hours,
After
you
he
know.
tore his vocal cords, he still continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or didn't react to it. They continued whispering into the microphones until the second of the captives started to scream. The 3 non-screaming captives took books apart.
Pictures like this are really
page after page of their
creepy.
own feces and pasted them over the
Poo!
The screaming promptly stopped, and so did the whispering in the microphones.
Microphones.
After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they weren't working, as they thought it impossible that no sound could be coming from the chamber. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would not do. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke a response from the captives.
Sorry, I've got to mention.
We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor, or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom. To their surprise, they heard one single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer wish to be freed." Debate broke out among the researchers and the government officials funding the experiment. Unable to provoke any other response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day.
Why would you go on midnight? Why would you do midnight?
Why would you? What, don't do anything on midnight.
Which you know.
Immediately, voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different subjects began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened, and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside the chamber. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one can rightly call the state that any of them were in living. The food rations for the past 5 days had not been so much as touched. The were chunks of rotting flesh from the dead subject's thighs and chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, which allowed 4 inches of red liquid to accumulate on the floor.
Red liquid. Do you mean blood?
How much of the liquid that was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the
fuck, could you imagine? See your bone.
Not with teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that all of them were self-inflicted. The organs below the rib cages of all 4 test subjects had been removed. While the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place, the skin and muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the rib cage.
Oh fuck! Oh
All
god!
the removed blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the bodies of the subjects.
Fuck! Let's get you testing.
All 4 could be seen working, digesting what was apparently their own flesh, which they had been eating for many days.
Dried food must have been awful what they provided.
To return to that chamber in order to remove the test subjects. The subjects continued to scream to be left alone in the chamber, and
making me thirsty.
begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep.
Ooh, bitch.
To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another, gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth.
Oh god!
Soldiers lost their lives, if you count ones that committed suicide. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured and was bleeding out quickly. The medical staff attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the normal human dose of morphine, and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the arm of one doctor. His heart continued beating for a full 2 minutes after he ran out of blood. Even after his heart stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word, more, over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell
I just thought of the
silent.
Britney Spears song.
Get me more.
Moved to a medical facility. The 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake.
That must have been good shit, didn't it? Give me
The
that.
most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back in his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him. He fell asleep into the strength
Sedative?
and gas was brought out to put him to sleep.
We're not judging it, it's just funny.
The way through a
He must be well clothed.
leather strap on his wrist. It took little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject, it was found that his blood had triple the normal level of oxygen found in a human body. The muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle to not be subdued.
Fuck, can you imagine?
9. Why not just go for
The
10?
second survivor had been the first
Wanna
of
go
the
the
group to
full
start
full
screaming.
mile.
His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or object to surgery.
Or
and
sing.
he only reacted by shaking his head very violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought out. He shook his head yes when a nurse suggested
He shook his head
they
yes.
try the surgery without anesthetic. He did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what little remained of his skin.
Oh god.
The surgeon stated repeatedly that it should be medically impossible for the subject to still be alive. One terrified nurse stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times.
I get crawl into a
Whenever his
smile,
eyes
you
were
know.
closed. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk. Assuming this was the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so he could write out his message. It was simple.
Oh, my rib.
Cutting.
Oh, keep cutting. Oh,
The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic. The surgeon found it almost impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were
Abnormally short period of time. Periodically.
Why had they injured themselves? Why had they ripped out their own organs? Why did they want the gas? Only one response was given. I must remain awake. All three subjects' restraints were reinforced and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project.
I thought they were getting filmed. I'm trying to level that with my eye. I'm just going like that.
The commanding officer, an ex-KGB, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas.
That's what I think. You know what? They've been suffering. Put them back on it. That's what they want.
Just do it. Just leave them alone.
In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for a long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all three stopped struggling the moment they were back on the gas. It was obvious that, at this point, all three were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously.
Don't hum.
Straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left again, just to have something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow.
He's humming.
The first to be wired for EEG. Most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves.
Oh God! Don't look at it. Fuck.
They were normal, but most of the time, he just flatlined.
Imagine that humming.
As if he was repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal again. As they focused on the paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped.
Simultaneously.
Yeah.
The remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flat lines as the other.
Very demanding. You got the gas.
What would you want?
Chamber with both subjects inside, as well as three other researchers.
Earring was sticking out.
One of the three immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank right between the eyes, then turned the gun to the mute subject and blew his brains out. He pointed the gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed, as the members of the medical and research team fled the room. I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with you, he screamed.
He's good.
No longer be called a man strapped to the table. What are you, he demanded. I must know. I must know. What are you?
I had to do it.
Easily, the subject asked. We are you. We
Sounds like Yoda.
that looks within you all, begging to be freed at every moment in your deepest
He doesn't
state of
now.
mind. We are what you hide from your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence when you go to the nocturnal heaven where we cannot tread. The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's exposed heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out. So nearly free.
Oh, it's quite sad at the end, isn't it? Oh, look at that though. Oh, goodness!
Hello, bye-bye, bye-bye. You've got autoplay on.
Because let me live.
Okay.
Fuck, you know what? That was fucking good. I liked it. As creepy as it was,
That
that
freaked
was
me
so
out.
cool. No, but he was good.
He was
I give him
good.
round of applause. I like the characters, even though they, well, you know,
He did little
the
voices.
voices.
It's just, it freaked me out when it was like,
That made it good though. That actually sounded like a fart. I hope you enjoyed that. That was
creepy.
So,
I liked that.
I liked it. It was interesting.
like, comment, subscribe, follow us on the Instagrams, on the Twitters, not in the real lives.
We'll see you back on the sofa. But again, I know we keep making excuses, but I've got fucking builders outside because they're repaving all the floor in the world. You know what? And they weren't even originally going to give us a drop curb. I'm like, bitch, please. We paid for a double drop curb. Put it back.
place.
Piss takers, guys.
Very upset about it. Bye.
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 Bingy bing, bingy bing, bingy bingy bing. End. How good is The Conjuring 2?
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
What's the name? Velcro or something?
Velcro?
The Valcom or whatever it is.
I name you Velcro!
Like Malcolm.
Voltarol.
Voltarol.
So cool, they filmed fucking down the road.
I know.
Oh my god, I feel famous. At the beginning, it was like, took events into Enfield, London.
That's us.
That's